Wake up, buyer payer people. It's a beautiful day. Go grab yourself another cup of joe and say hello to Jim and Michelle Rhoads on the Buy Here Pay Here Morning Show. Take it away, you two.
Well,
Good morning. I need to
there
put
we-
us into the
Yeah,
stream.
we have to come
Yeah.
get
It's
on the
Monday.
microphones. Hey, yeah, we're a few minutes late. It's been a little choppy over
It
here,
has
but
been, but it's good. It's good.
happy to be here.
We were going through and reading some different articles on our subject today, just making sure that we, had a little bit of non-attorney know-how, but we
Yeah.
can talk about that in just a minute.
Did you know just today, not April Fool's Day?
It is. Happy April Fools for anyone that does April Fools. It's
Mhm.
actually, the funny thing is my younger brother is celebrating his 20th wedding anniversary today.
Mhm.
And so they got married on April Fools in Vegas. And then, so it
Do
was.
we know if they're really even married?
I
Do we know?
hope. I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure that they are. But so happy anniversary to my brother and his lovely,
Yeah.
my brother John and his lovely wife Holly, and
They're so amazing.
we had
Love
dinner at
those
their
two.
house last night, and they're just amazing
That whole
people.
family.
So
Yep.
what announcements do we have?
We have a lot. I didn't bring the actual calendar for all of our meetings are set for V8. I believe
We do have a couple of spots available for.
Yeah, so we've got Group 4. Actually, I can remember. Group 4 is the one that meets on the 16th. That's the one that's 100 to 500 dealers. We've got seats available in that one.
Yeah, so
And
mid-sized.
And then the end of the month, we have Group 3. That's the newcomer group, and that one meets on the 30th. So there's plenty of time for folks to. And in the meantime, just make sure you capture your notes receivable numbers and your inventory numbers, and then let's get together.
Yeah. So let us know if that's something that you are looking to do. Coming up, one of the reasons why the new group is meeting at the very end of the month is because the week before we will be in Vegas, and we'll be doing the Neo User Summit, and then we have meetings with a lot of our people from our sponsors and our CEO and others, talking about what it is that we're going to be doing for this next year. So
good.
Yeah,
it's
good stuff.
Did you say the date? The Neo User Summit is on Tuesday, the 23rd. We have a number of our clients that are going to be there. We will be there and learning about the latest with Neo. And I got to get back out to the Neo user group and do an update. We have. I put that post out there in their user group about a client that was having a conflict in the interest of trying to help all dealers who were maybe facing the same thing. We put it out there in the group, and now we have a resolution. And so I need to chase down the people who can kind of speak to the specifics. I wasn't involved in the technical meetings, and so I need to make sure I understand exactly what the result was so that I can help clear that up.
So thank you to Neo to helping get that resolved, and it wasn't really anything on their side. So at least that so we appreciate their help in getting that resolved.
As does our clients.
As does our clients. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, so that's getting fixed, and that was all about just
it's learning. It's like, well, this isn't working, so why is it not working? And then being able to do that in a public forum so that other people can learn from that. If you find this same kind of stuff happening, that you can.
And we I shared in a different post in our. And we talked about it in our podcast, sometimes, and this has not happened with Neo, but it's like often it's like, it's these people, it's those people.
It's not us. It's not us. It's them. It's not us. It's not us. It's them.
So, anyway, there's a resolution. And as she said, Neo was doing their part. It just somebody was leaving some steps out, and it wasn't all of the tracking information from ad campaigns was not making it into Neo, which is an important way for us to analyze results on a number of different and connect applicants with campaigns, et cetera, et cetera. So all good now. There's a lot of progress on that. And I think that's probably it from my side.
Dealer Roundup coming up on the 18th. Okay. Brent Carmichael will be co-moderating with Jim. We have our 3 subjects. The subjects, I don't know that we have the titles completely nailed down, but it's going to be on outside private capital, for funding your buy here, pay here, outsourcing, and
the other one's going to be hiring car people. We called it like something about
car dogs,
right?
But then the other one was outsourcing too. Yeah.
So it's about hiring car dogs for that everybody's familiar
for buy
with that
here,
expression.
pay here.
I think people that are experienced car salespeople can it work in buy here, pay here, why or why not? So we will have that conversation with Brent Carmichael and a few dealers. I'll be reaching out to dealers this week.
Yeah, if any of those subjects sound interesting to you, and you feel like you've got a dog in the fight, let us know.
Yeah.
And we because we're putting together the panels right now.
Yeah.
All right. Do we have a subject?
Yeah.
And yeah.
So this is one that it sounds like you're turning it over to me.
No, Jim.
Yeah. So we've touched on similar subjects in the past, and this one we haven't really addressed specifically. And I'm glad we brought it up because in our own my own research this morning in preparing for the broadcast, I learned that some of the terminology I'm using is not accurate, right?
So should I put that thing up?
Yeah. Well, yeah, let's go. I mean, that's fine. We can cover that piece first. So let's talk about So redemption? I put the poll out in success, and you might help me to locate and let's see the latest information on that. But the thing I want to learn about that is really what we put a poll out that basically says, do you allow your customers to redeem after repossession? So it was just short answer, like yes, no, or sometimes depending. And the depending
most
situation,
everybody was sometimes depending when I was looking at it.
And this is why it's so important for us to revisit this thing about redemption versus reinstatement, because I've been using the word redemption to redeem a repo for my whole career. So I picked that up somewhere. And now in reading some of the material.
Yeah. Capital One, I read an article this morning where they were talking about redemption and versus reinstatement, and we were like, oh, okay. So maybe the rest of you understood the difference between the two as well, but when they were talking about redemption, it was about you can get your car back if you pay it off.
Yeah, so let's clear that up. And so I had the same thing. I read an article from Credit Karma, and they use some of the same phrasing. So let's first clear that up. Like when we talk about redemption, that's the customer coming in paying off. So when we use the phrasing, and this is my own mistake, like when I put out the poll, do you allow the customer to, redeem the car? Well, under the definition of redemption, we would have to give the car back to them because that's the customer paying it off. That's prior to a sale. They have to act in a certain time period.
Well, and also one of the things that I read talks about is that each state has different laws around this, and some states require a loan to have the option to redeem redeem
or reinstate?
To redeem a redemption. So check with your local laws, because it was about you have to send out something that says, hey, you have X amount of days. I said between 10 and 15 days to redeem, pay this off. This is what you owe. And they can come and buy it because it's going to auction. And so if you can pay for it by this date, then it won't be going to auction. If not, it's going to auction.
Again, check your laws.
Yes, check your laws.
Your state may be different. And so that's what we talked about, bringing an attorney back to this conversation. I think the challenge will still be, even if you had an attorney here, the answer is going to be, it depends a lot. Like you're almost going to need to talk to your attorney and get familiar with your regulations in your state, and even some jurisdictional stuff I'd learned in the past. But just be cautious and know that there are very specific rules around this. So when we talk about creating a policy, that we want to be tough and we want to have our own policy, just understand there are very much UCC regulations in place, Uniform Commercial Code. There's a lot of stuff that protects, creditors, and this is not new. This has been around for decades. Yeah. And so this is stuff that is meant to, in some states, there's certain requirements on a post. So let me just walk you through it, Michelle, since you haven't, been a dealer and haven't been through this.
I married into buy here, pay here. Yeah, I learn every day.
Yeah. So the thing that happens in a repossession situation, and again, this part varies by state as well. Some states are required to notify the customer in advance of their intention to repo if the customer doesn't satisfy any delinquency. So there's
some states that require that, but not all states.
Right. Okay. And then at the time of repossession, we're expected, and this is the part, I'm not an attorney, so I can speak to my own experience in my own state as a dealer from before, but really you would want to check and make sure about your obligation to notify the customer once the car has been repossessed. So there's a curing period. Typically it's an opportunity for the customer to cure the default, to resolve the deficiency, to otherwise resolve the matter. And so that requirement
redemption
also can vary. So typically the form is available in the DMS, but when I say redemption, that was my own language. Like, you'd have to go back and see what the language is. And again, with most, this is where DMSs can help a lot, because the DMS is typically going to have the necessary documents in your state. So this is part of where we can lean on them for some of that, and obviously talk to your state association. But I think the key thing is, once we serve notice to the customer that, and by the way, we have a podcast from the past. I think you can just search personal belongings. I think we did that's kind of a separate subject, but we would notify the customer that we've repossessed the car and that they have an opportunity, have a window of time to resolve the matter, or the car will be sold. Okay. And so now this is why the question comes up about redemption versus reinstatement. So reinstatement would be really what I should have asked in the poll about, do you allow the customer to get the car back without paying the account in full? Obviously, if they come in and pay the account in full, they're getting the car back.
And there's sold it. Yeah. And what's the things that I was reading is that there's a lot that I didn't see that there was like any kind of statute that says this is how you have to do a reinstatement if you choose to do a reinstatement. But there were a lot of options. They were talking about, just getting it current, paying off, whatever towing fees and lot fees, or reestablishing the loan and re-amortizing. And so, and decreasing, I mean, if the reason why that they've repoed is because they couldn't afford the payment, then it's an opportunity to reestablish the loan to
reamortize. So now this is tricky, because now you get into a scenario where I'm not sure that buy here, pay here on a retail installment contract has the same latitude that a lender might as a finance company in refinancing, reamortizing the note. So again, one more reason to talk to an attorney and make sure what you're able to do. Most dealers are not lowering payments for customers in the interest of a redemption. They may, if it's permitted. But I think the part that I was trying to get to is that we see through social media, especially, people talking about how they handle repo reinstatements. As it turns out, can the customer can get the car back under these circumstances? And I think for this morning, I just wanted to caution everybody and say, check with an attorney, because I'm hearing some things that are unlawful based on my own understanding, which is not your state. It's just based on many years of travels across many states and kind of seeing the practice. But it's typical that your customer is going to be expected to catch up any past due payments, right? If they're, behind 2 payments of $400, they're going to have that money. They're going to have, any late fees, probably. They're going to have any repossession fee that you've incurred. Now, be careful about that one, because I have heard plenty of attorneys say you're really treading on thin ice if you're charging your customer based on your own cost of a repossession. If you're doing it yourself, you try to charge the customer $500 for repossession, that's really tricky legal territory. Okay. So again, not an attorney. I'm just saying that ask your attorney, because this gets tricky.
Would it have to be like real costs kind of thing?
That's cut and dry. Yeah. Like if you certainly can recover your direct costs. And, there have been times I can tell you as a dealer, I try not to get too black and white on much of anything. I always try to leave myself some wiggle room in a policy. And so, for example, when you say the customer has got to catch up the past due and has got to pay the repossession fee or whatever else the policy might be, then I can just tell you there have been situations in my own career as a dealer where I allowed the customer back in the car without them having to fulfill all those things. And so
that's where that subjectivity thing comes in. I mean, it could be, let's say someone doesn't make the payment because they had some major catastrophic thing that happened in their life. And it's like, I couldn't do this, but they've been a great payer before something happened.
And the nature of our business, frankly, is that you have, and I can't believe Michelle didn't smile when I used the word frankly, because
sorry. he's like, who is that, and why should we use that word? Frankly,
she's
he gives me grief about so much stuff. It's so funny.
Frankly, and I'll ask her, now, was that really Frank? Are you sure frankly was? Just giving her a hard time. Anyway, so I think one of the things that happens here is that when you get in a situation where the customer is in that place, like you want to be able to do whatever makes sense for you as the dealer creditor, because I understand what's legally expected and what I might be able to require the customer to do, but I just know that as a dealer, it's necessary on occasion to repossess as a matter of enforcement. So imagine you've got a customer who's newer in the contract and they haven't financed with you in the past. All their experience in collections and this sort of thing is with other creditors, if at all. And they simply don't know. They don't, communicate well enough. They didn't hear what was said. We haven't expressed this part very clearly. Like most of us don't say to the customer at the time of closing, if you haven't made your payment by the 15th day, we will be repossessing the car. Most of us don't say that.
Yeah.
Nor am I advocating for that. I'm simply saying when the customer is in that situation, sometimes it's necessary to repossess. Customer's not communicating. We're not hearing from them. And so it becomes necessary to repossess. However, that's done more as a matter of enforcement. It was as a dealer myself, let me just speak for me. If I'm the dealer, it's my hope and expectation to a degree that when we repossess a customer's car, that we're going to find a way to resolve the matter. So one other quick thing that I don't think I shared this when we talked about repo belongings before, but one of the things that I would do as a matter of meeting with the customer. So this is kind of the tips that I can recommend as a non-attorney. If a customer wanted to meet, called in and said, hey, you guys repossessed my car. I really would like to try to get that worked out. And I would, I'd set up a time to have them come meet with me, and I would just listen, and I can say that it's easier to have that conversation with the customer when we're in possession of the car. It's in a secure area. We have our set of keys. We don't yet have the customer's set of keys, perhaps, but the collateral is now in our possession. And so now it puts us in a difficult position. And I was never smug about it. When I would meet with a customer, I would give them the opportunity to tell their story, explain what happened, and so we'll just kind of say, your account got really past due and we didn't hear from you. Like, so talk to me about what's going on. Like, how come we didn't hear from you on these payments? And then just be quiet and listen. But before I would do that, even, I think this is the part that is, because we have an obligation, like a legal obligation to serve them notice. Okay. So back to this notice of intent to sell the collateral. Okay. If I were to meet with a customer, we repossessed in the morning and we're going to meet with the customer at 2:00 in the afternoon, then I would have all the documents prepared so that they're ready for signing. So when the customer comes in, they're going to start talking about the car and the payments and this and that. And I've said, let's give this a minute. I'm happy to meet with you and talk about this. But before we do all that, here's a couple of things I need from you. I need you to review this document and sign it. I need you to give me the keys to the car. Of course, when I ask for the keys to the car, they're going to get upset and they're going to say, well, I thought we were going to meet and try to work this out. Like, I'm hoping to get the car back. And I would typically just take the position that, look, I'm happy to hear what happened there, and maybe we'll get it worked out. In the meantime, I need to get the keys to the car. And so I would just stand there and wait patiently. I need to get, and they're upset, and I understand they're upset. It's a frustrating situation. And
and I can imagine the emotion tied around those keys, because it's their last connection to getting the car back.
Yeah. And I'm going to just tell them, look, I'm going to listen. We're going to try to get it worked out. I'm going to hear what you have to say, but I just am not, we're not going to have that conversation until I've got the keys to the car back. So it's really it's a posturing thing, if you want to use that language. It's like, but it was also crossing some legal ground for me. Like, I would have the customer sign saying, because the notification is the same whether they reinstate or not. Okay, so I'm still going to have them sign the notification. This says that you understand that we're going to sell the car by this date if we haven't reached a resolution. And now they've signed it in person. I can make a photocopy as opposed to mailing it certified mail that came in person on the day of, whatever the day after. And so we would typically be the day of, because by the next day we would have already mailed the certification. Now I still would probably have the customer sign, because I'm just trying to make sure that I'm super clear about I have served the customer the appropriate notices, and now I can just listen. Right now, it's all buttoned up legally. It's all ready to move forward if we don't reach a resolution and a reinstatement. And now I just hear what they have to say. And of course, now they're in a much different position, like both legally, right, and just kind of you might call it energetically, like it's a whole different environment now. And now I can listen. I can just sit back and listen and hear what they had to say. And I'm at the end, I may be satisfied with the story.
Yeah. Well, and one thing that I know about Jim is Jim has the skill naturally to listen. And that is for a lot. I mean, it's easy for when someone comes in, it's like you lead the conversation. It's like you're driving the conversation. It's I need you to sign this. I need you to sign this. And that's an easy thing for you as the dealer, or for someone that's working the desk for that kind of transaction, to just like, let's just go right in and you take control of the conversation. Cause I know from having been having my own teams and managing my own teams, it's kind of like firing someone, so you get in there and you like lead the conversation. This is what needs to happen. And then you step into the listening part. And that is a skill that takes some bit of practice if you don't normally have it, because most people feel uncomfortable with silence, and so they will just start to fill it. But you just want to make sure that the customer's the one that's filling the silence, not you.
Yeah.
And so be quiet and let them fill the silence, because they will fill the silence. If you're quiet long enough, they will fill it.
Sure.
And then you can just add whatever little things to kind of keep the conversation moving, so that they're the ones that are filling the silence. Give them a proper amount of time to explain what it is that's happened, ask the appropriate questions, and then make your decision.
But also imagine, it's kind of back to this subjectivity thing about attitude matters here.
Oh, yeah.
Like if the customer is still agitated and angry and doesn't seem to show any real remorse, or you don't feel like they've learned anything, then of course I don't feel like I want to proceed.
And that's totally fair, but it's also in what kind of attitude are you bringing to this?
Yeah.
Are you like, I'm so exasperated with you, I'm like barely even listening, can we just get through this? What kind of energy are you bringing to the conversation? Because people can pick up on that. I mean, you hear it's like when you're on the phone, people that do mostly phones, whether it be BDC or collections, put a freaking mirror in front of them and say, look at your face when you're talking, because that is a good, inflections and all of that will carry through. So, especially if you're doing something like this, you can pick up an awful lot about the energy coming from the person that is leading this conversation.
Yeah. And I think if you go back and try to imagine, of course, it's easier for you to imagine because you know me and see me do similar things, but it's like, if you imagine the customer comes in and my tone of voice is one of, I'm going to meet with you. I need to get the keys to the car. And of course, that's naturally going to potentially upset them, right? At least for a moment. And so I'm going to try to reassure them, look, we're going to meet and we're going to try to get this worked out, but I just got to cover this legal ground first. I need to get the keys to the car. I'm going to need you to review and sign these. And I didn't mention, I would also be having them sign their belongings list, because if they do get upset and we don't
which
get
is that other website or that other podcast. Yeah.
So it's like, I've got all those things, those T's crossed, and now I can just sit and listen. And now I really can. I'm in a great position, and I'm able to just sit and I'm really just listening out of curiosity. Like I'm just confused about how we found ourselves in this place, and I need to understand what happened. And so now I can just listen. I can take the documents that are signed. I can get them a copy. I can put mine back aside and just say, okay, now tell me what happened. And, how come we didn't hear from you? And just let them explain. And like I said, a lot of times there's a satisfactory explanation. It's just a matter of hearing, what went on. And again, many of the customers that we're serving just aren't familiar with the process. They didn't realize that they could face repossession in that situation because, again, our policies are different than where they finance somewhere else, and so they can't know what our policies are going to be and how that's going to happen. But I think what I always wanted to make sure is that, when we ever ordered a repossession, we were in safe legal grounds. We had plenty of documentation. So it was more than legal. It was like we not only had the customer defaulted, but we had ample record to substantiate the fact that we had made every reasonable effort to try to contact them, whatever was,
Which is great for if you've got a great CRM. So,
you just document. Really, most of that happened in the DMS on the account side.
Yeah.
So it's like you're just logging all the stuff, all the effort to try to contact the customer. Now we take the repossession action because we've done everything reasonable to try to communicate with them. And now, again, I'm just going to sit and listen. It's my hope that, and I don't have the data on it. I don't know if anybody's really got good data on repo reinstatement. Like, of the customers that we allow to reinstate, what's the success rate with that? I would love to see
I bet you there's a lot of theories out there, but
I just don't know that anybody's really tracked the data correctly. So, so it's like I would be interested to know, at least anecdotally, I'd like to be able to hear from people, when you do allow a customer redeem, what's the success rate on that? And I can say that, my feeling anecdotally was that we probably half of the customers.
Anecdotally.
Yeah.
Okay.
Frankly.
So
I think it's just kind of, my best recollection on that is probably roughly half of the customers, understood, moved on, communicated in a way that they could avoid repossession in the future. But the others.
Well, and that's also, it's in your policy or whatever, is if we've already been through this once, there may not be a conversation at all. And so it's just like, where's your keys? Here's the thing, sign the stuff.
And that was my practice.
And it's only a curing of the loan.
That was my practice. I kind of used the phrasing in another conversation recently about on our podcast about radius last week. It's like, you kind of take this position where, I've even used the phrase like, this isn't baseball. You don't get 3 strikes. So once, if you have a strike, then just know that we've got to make sure we understand one another, that we're able to communicate well, and that we avoid finding ourselves in that place. And I would typically use phrasing along the line of because if we find it necessary to repossess again, you may not get the car back. Now, let me just say, legally, I don't know if I do repossess a car a second time. This is where you folks need to just check with your attorney, because if you do repossess a second time and the customer shows up and meets the conditions for reinstatement, are you required by law to give the car back to them?
I don't know, and that's a great question. But the things that I was reading is that there are laws surrounding redemption, but not around reinstatement.
I think redemption would be more straightforward because customers got the full cash.
Yeah. And so it's like, if you want to come in and buy it, great. Yeah. You've got your car back, but we're done having a conversation about reinstatement.
Yeah. I'm no longer your finance source for payments,
Yeah. So, I want to, before we sign off, just, recap, but also, most of the time from my perspective, and you tell me if I'm like way off base.
Oh, of course.
That when I know you will.
I'm
sometimes when you're watching us and you can just see the look on his face, like, what?
What?
Okay.
What are you talking about?
Is that that reinstatement conversation is not going to be with a collector. It's not going to be with the salesperson. It's going to be with the dealer principal or the general manager.
It needs to be the person who has the decision.
And there's nowhere else for someone to go for the decision. And that's communicated. So and for most dealerships, that would be the dealer principal. For most out there are some that are large enough that they've got multiple sites, and so it's a general manager and
all of supervisor or the collection could be authorized. Yeah.
So if you are the person that is responsible for reinstatement, I would challenge you to talk to someone that is one of your team members, maybe even your partner, and say, how good am I at empathetic listening, listening? How good am I at empathetic listening? And, what would you rate my skills for listening to be. Because, if you've got a good relationship with your partner or with your general manager or with your, your collection, whatever, it's like, what would you rate? Because I really want to know that I'm able to sit and listen, because listening, even with salespeople, is like, some people got it and some people don't. They just lead the conversation and it's like boom, 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 and they close, but they don't spend an awful lot of time listening with, listening with the intent to respond. There's a difference between listening for the intent to understand and listening for the intent to respond. And usually if you're listening with the intent to respond, you're already formulating your answer or your comeback or whatever to whatever it is saying. And so, have this conversation with someone that you trust, that you can say, how good am I at this?
That's
and
good.
if there's room to improve, then there's lots of ways
I'm
for you
glad
to
brought
practice that.
because one other piece that we can touch on, I mentioned it could be a collection supervisor.
Mm-hmm.
I got to get a little water. I'm going to cough in the microphone.
Okay.
But the collection supervisor would be probably my last choice of somebody to do it. If I've got a general manager or business owner who this is really a business matter more than it is a collections matter. So the reason that's significant to me is that the collection supervisor has been overseeing this account. Perhaps there's a team, but they're much more likely to take it personally, and they're frustrated with the customer by the time a repossession is ordered. So naturally, their approach to the conversation is one of frustration. It's a bit personal, and their inclination is to not give the car back. And while that may be the right decision in the end, it's just tainted by a lot of emotion.
Yeah.
And so it's like, this is why we think that it ought to be done by somebody who is, in a better position, maybe present with, so that we can understand the whole story. But really, let me just be the dealer for a minute. Take the collection supervisor out of the picture. I'm going to go to the notes. I'm going to read the history. I'm going to read the recent history since the customer became past due. What has happened? What kind of dialogue?
Without the emotion. Yeah.
No emotion. I'm looking at the history. I'm looking at the log. What happened with this customer? Did they communicate? Did we communicate? Did we fulfill our part to notify the customer, give them ample opportunity to resolve the matter? And I just want to see the whole picture and understand what happened. And now I can meet with the customer, hear their story. If I feel like they have learned something from the experience, they're remorseful, they still live here, they still have the same job, and they better understand what is required, then I may be prepared to move forward, and my collection supervisor might not be. And so this is something we have to be prepared to navigate.
I think as a business owner, as a team leader, it's a good idea to hear from the collection manager through the notes, preferably and that's where a good CRM is important. And it's part of your process, that when it gets to this point, the person over it maybe adds some notes, and then the person that's over them, the collection manager, might add some notes as well, so that you can go through and listen to.
I think
that's from Hugo.
It says Facebook user. Yeah.
So a Facebook user, and I'm assuming it's Hugo, says, please don't ask Amanda if I'm an empathetic listener.
I wouldn't dream of it.
I wouldn't dream of it.
If it's Hugo.
Yeah.
I wouldn't dream of it. Facebook user.
So it is this kind of conversation for redemption, for whatever, is best done without emotion.
I'm going to throw one more for you before we wrap up on this subject. There's another reason that a dealer or general manager would want to be involved in this. A lot of times there's a financial element to this. So you're sitting here looking at a customer who wishes to redeem or reinstate.
Reinstate.
And now
now we have to change all of our vernacular.
And now you're looking at the account balance on the customer's account, and you're looking at the value of the collateral that has been repossessed. And you've got a financial consideration there that the collection supervisor has no perspective
and
on.
Also, the collateral is in your hands, so you can actually look at the condition of the collateral too as part of the conversation.
But I'm just saying, the financial consideration is yet another one to decide, do I really want this car to go to auction and have this customer left in position where so again, I don't know if we're allowed to refinance or reamortize in that situation, lower payments, but there could be moments where that's going to be an appropriate course of action. And I can say, as a dealer myself, depending on the value of the collateral, if the customer paid the past due and resumed payments even if they never made another payment, if they made one or two more payments, you still financially might choose to do that. So I'm just saying there are going to be times that the financial element, the actual numbers and the value of collateral is going to be a decision. And this is what we have in Buy Here, Pay Here. It's a little bit different if you're a lender, if you're Capital One and the repossession is off at some auction and, this is us.
And that also depends on your business model. I mean, gosh, that's one thing about Buy Here, Pay Here that has been, it's really hard to have a hard and fast rule on anything. So it's like, what's your business model? What's your how, all of the things. But I mean, if it's a car that still has $20,000 left on it,
sure,
that couldn't be a different
Well, this is an
conversation
interesting one because there's legal implications here. There are financial elements to consider. There's just simple policy, like enforcement of policy that is important. We have to be able to enforce that policy or it becomes meaningless, and so this is all part of, why this was a significant conversation. But I think we've covered the pieces I want to cover. Too. We can wrap up there.
Okay.
You have no problem?
I'm trying to bring up some music because, we have a new board and we haven't programmed all the fun music left in it. So, it's techie tools and techie toys and
thanks
stuff.
For tuning in on Monday. We'll see you
Thank you.
Wednesday.
All right. Have a great rest of your week. And thanks for sharing your morning.